Ladies and gentlemen of the Cover Killer Nation, it's time for us to go back into a current album review, something that has been out now for about a week or so, and that is Tales of the Sands by the power progressive metal band Myrath from Tunisia. Now, their name means legacy, and their legacy has already been somewhat cemented by their first two releases. This is their third release. Hope and Desert Call both received pretty well-recognized acclaim within the power and the progressive metal communities. And in fact, the latter of those two, Desert Call, even got a review from yours truly about a year ago or so. So it's now time for us to examine their third album and kind of see where this band is heading, and to see if perhaps the direction has changed at all, either that or if this is a band that is still one that should be on your radar. Now, first off, whenever you listen to this record, before you even listen to the very first note, you're going to notice something whenever you check out the time frame. By comparison to their second album, their third release is about 20 minutes shorter, and you're going to notice that there's no tracks that really eclipse the 6-minute mark. If you remember on Desert Call, there was a mammoth 10-minute long track that was really one of the centerpieces on that particular release, and you'll notice that there is a real absence to any sort of length like that. Now, that means nothing, okay? That means nothing. That's just a basic schematics, basic semantics or whatever the hell you want to say that you notice from first listen, before you even listen to the first note. Then you pop it on, and you realize something. You realize that this is a band that has honed their craft on their third release to have a little bit more of a, not so much a catchiness to it, but the hooks here sound very, very delicious. And what I mean by delicious whenever I say it in that format, guys, is of course that you eat it up. You really enjoy what you hear because whenever those little hooks come, they catch your ear and they're very pleasurable. It's not something where you're really being attacked by all of these different time signatures where you're just kind of confused. Either that or it makes perfect musical sense, but whenever you listen to it, it maybe sounds a little bit grainy, a little bit choppy, or something like that. These are all hooks that are very well recognizable. In fact, you could even say that there's a little bit more of a lean toward the power metal side on Tales in the Sands as opposed to their previous album. Now, this is an album that I think some fans may be a little bit disappointed with. And I don't know if it's really because of the fact that it's 20 minutes shorter, it's devoid of a lot of progression. There's still progression there. You just have to dig for it a little bit harder. It's not as obvious to the ear, but that's not something that you should be seeking out actively 100% whenever you listen to it, first time, second time, anytime. I think that they might be a little bit disappointed in the fact that it just seems, this is an album that seems to exist. It's a very good album, however, it's not an album that really, Hope and Desert Call really wowed a lot of people. It gave people a lot of it gave Tunisia a lot of respect, you know what I mean? Whenever people listen to to those two albums, they really saw Myrath as the future and one of the best bands that were really not very well known by the rest of the Western world. And I believe that Tales in the Sands is still going to give them a lot of recognition, and I think a lot of people are still going to get this album once they find out who Myrath is, and they're going to really enjoy what they hear. I think they're really going to find it to be a very nice release. However, I feel as though it might get just kind of lost in some of the wealths of albums that come out around this similar style each and every year, and especially here in 2011 with albums being released by bands such as Stradivarius. I don't know if this is going to have that same wow factor where people are going to remember this album without even thinking about it whenever the end of the year comes. And that, to me, is a little disappointing. However, aside from that, musically it's very sound, lyrically it's very well constructed, and speaking of construction, the song construction by itself is by and large a great maturity process. It's just an album that I don't know if people are going to remember. And please correct me if I'm wrong. If this is an album that you listen to, ladies and gentlemen of the Cover Killer Nation, and the very first thing you thought of was, this is going to be on my top 10 list, this is going to be on my top 20 list, this is my favorite album of this year, then correct me. Call me an asshole. Call me a dick. Say that I'm wrong. But to me, that's just how I feel. I think that the first two albums were stronger. So I think that this release is unfortunately the weakest thus far in their catalog, which for me means that whenever number 4 is released, whenever that is, they're going to have to do a little bit of proving to me. they're going to have to hit me with something really, really awesome in order for me to really feel that this is one of the hottest bands not to be known by most of the world. Like I said, if I'm wrong, I'm giving you guys the power to correct me in the comments. But that's just the way that I feel. I feel that this is the weakest of their 3 albums worth of material, but still at the same time, it's no slouch. It's not like saying that this is an album where they released greats such as Altars of Madness and Domination or Blessed Are the Sick, and then all of a sudden, fuck, this is a Ludivinium and SANDS. No, not at all. Not whatsoever. This is a band where a weak album constitutes that it's just not quite on par with the first 2. Not that it's night and day to the first 2. So ladies and gentlemen of the Cover Killer Nation, I still recommend that you check out this album. It's not as though I'm saying, well, this album was not as good as the first 2, so fuck it. No, I'm not that big of a jerk. Definitely check out this release, Tales of the Sands by Myrath. And definitely support this band. Get them a little bit more well-known to your friends, to your family, to your pets, to your enemies, to people that you just don't know, whatever. Cover Killer Nation saying that sometimes you can release a weak album and it still can be a little bit strong in ways. I think this album has a great maturity process written all over it. It's just something that doesn't quite size up to the first 2. Enough said.